Hi, today on the podcast, I would like to welcome my guest, Laura Haver. She's a mom, a play advocate, author, speaker, life coach, and former pro athlete. She's an expert in play, communications, and happiness. And she has helped thousands of people to experience more fun, fulfillment, and joy in their lives. She's been featured on the Today Show, CBS, Fox, Parents, and more, and is the author of a new book, Play Together, Games and Activities for the Whole Family to Boost Creativity, Connection, and Mindfulness. And I can't wait for this conversation because much like her, I am a big advocate of joy and play and really getting us all to engage with life a lot more. And so I want to welcome her. Welcome, Laura.
Hi, thank you. Hi, Kristen. Hello, everybody.
Oh my gosh, so good. I can't wait. So first, I would love, Laura, for you just to share with us a little bit about what did life look like, as you came up and you were, playing pro beach tennis, and now you're, mom and a wife, and you help people, you're a play advocate. So tell us about all of this and what you're, how you help people now.
Great, thanks. All right. When I was a kid, I was completely playful. I could turn anything into a play, right? Like I could get a brush and a bobby pin and, create a world like we
Yeah.
all can. And then, you kind of get older and you get older and you go through these moments. But specifically, when I became a mom, I remember being like, whoa, I always wanted to be a mom. I always wanted to have kids, but then being like, this is like, it was kind of crazy, right? It's sort of isolating. You just have all this new responsibility. And I was wanting to pour everything into my son. He had like a emergency C-section, kind of like in the NICU, kind of like not the birth I was expecting.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, wow, what's going on? And trying to build my life and trying to, bring the fun and bring the other pieces in. And it wasn't until one day I was on a date with my husband. It was our anniversary. So my parents were watching the kids, and we stumbled across a beach tennis tournament in San Diego where we live. But I didn't know what was going on anymore. So I had played pro beach tennis before kids, but then I had stopped, the beach tennis USA tour just kind of, stopped doing the big tour. And so we were like, okay, fine, I guess I'll get married and have kids, which was just the natural progression. But we ran into this tournament, and suddenly I was like, what? This is going on. They were going to have this huge tournament. And I started training again and I started playing. And it was an amazing transformation for me where I got to be myself, be me, Laura,
Yeah.
not me, mom.
Right.
I got to put that part in. And I joke around on interviews that, before that I was so tired all the time, like, up all night, all these things. But then all of a sudden I was training, I was running sprints in the sand, I was doing all this, but I had more energy than ever before because I had re-accessed part of myself that I had just sort of given up or paused.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. So, long story short, I competed again on the pro tour. I got ranked. I was in the top 5 in the United States. We were traveling around and competing for the spot on this world championships coming to San Diego. And then it got moved overseas. I'm trying to make this story really short for you guys but the point is that that kind of ended then. And I was like, what's going on? And how can I still reclaim this part of myself?
Mhm.
And how can I help other women to reclaim this as well? Like other women who don't have the pro tour showing up and being like, you have a chance to compete in the Olympics,
Yeah.
And so that's when I started back into my writing and speaking and coaching. And it's just, my honor and blessing to be able to help women of all ages to get in touch with what's important to them so they can shine and they can have energy and they can have a vibrant life.
Yeah.
So sort of a little quick summary of some of the main turning points.
Oh, I love it. I so much align with your mission, how you're helping women, because, I as well feel like so many of us have put things on pause, or we have just turned a different direction because we thought, oh, I need to get a career that seems stable, or whatever the thing was that we've sort of paused dreams, or we paused things that we enjoyed, or we paused a curiosity about ourselves for things that we were maybe would have pursued, but even if it's a hobby, but we were busy with kids or being a wife or doing something. And we do, if we have kind of pushed that away, we have to brush it off, at whatever age, and we have to rekindle that curiosity, right? That pique our interest and then explore new things, discover things, just like we did as kids. So what might you say to people that are listening to say, play, I don't get it, like plays for kids, I'm an adult woman, or it could be man. How is this relevant? So can you tell us two things? One, why is it relevant that we play as a family, right? No matter what age your kids are, whether you have a 5-year-old or a 25-year-old. And then also as just, adults, why should we still be playing?
Okay, great. I love it. I could talk about this forever, so I'll keep it as concise as possible. I like nerd out on the research. I love studying that, but I love studying it in a way so that I can share it with you guys in a way that's easy and accessible, right? So it's like, that there's the proof behind this, there's scientific studies, there's all that stuff, but what does it mean for you, right? And so playing as a family and playing as adults, the benefits of play are just ginormous, as you know, but it extends beyond just children. So it helps us to decrease stress and anxiety. I mean, that alone, I feel like I just kind of had to have a pause there, because
Yeah, I'm
who
with
doesn't
you.
want to decrease stress and anxiety? It's such a big deal.
Mhm.
Increase your creativity and your innovation.
Mhm.
Better relationships, right? When you're playing, you're kind of having this flow, like, how can we set this up? How do we work through this? So there's improving your communication skills
Mhm.
so that you can improve your ability to cooperate with others, which improves your relationships. It improves your health, because a lot of times you're, moving your body when you're playing, or you're working your mind as you're playing. And my favorite one really is it just has the spark for life. Like I said, it opens up your spark for life. And then that energy, like I mentioned before, even if it's counterintuitive, even if you're working out so hard, it overflows into the other areas of your life. And so when it comes to being relevant to playing as your family, no matter what age your family members are, right? If you could be like, some of my family members have been playing games from my book, and they're in their 80s, and then they're playing with their children, and then even they could be playing with their grandchildren, or even my friends that don't have kids are playing with their elderly parents.
Yeah.
And these moments of connection.
Mm-hmm. For
And when
sure.
it comes to the happiness studies, I'm sure and listeners might know, it's these human relationships and these connections that are the biggest, most important part to our overall well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And when we take time to sit down or stand up, right? Do whatever it is that we're doing, but like connecting, we put our phones aside, we put our distractions aside. That's what life is about. And, is these moments of connection and these fun things that just draw you in. So that would be my first answer. I mean, it kind of touches on both the relevancy for
Yeah,
adults and in playing together. But when it
absolutely.
comes, go ahead, I want to
Oh,
let
no,
you.
no, no. Yeah, I was gonna let you finish. Yeah, but I absolutely agree with you. Last night, my mom's in town visiting for about a week and a half, and she's, literally, some of the things we always say about the family and the business that I had is, fun and games. It's a fun and games thing, fun and games family. But we play games a lot, right? And so my mom, all the way down to all the grandkids, were playing games, all last night, and we'll do it again on Sunday night. And so absolutely, you're right. That's another way that we have a connection point with the different generations, and we do regularly.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, again, geeking out here, the intergenerational play is so important because it helps keep the adults, like the elderly adults
Yeah.
especially, it helps keep them young. And also it's this really special connection for the young people to talk to this. And like each area of your life, you have different phases and different things that are important. So like the grandparents or the older people can have new perspectives to share with the younger, and even with us at like middle age, I
Yeah,
guess, and so and it doesn't, and it could be games, right? Like some people love games, but it could be different for everybody, like what you
absolutely.
find fun. And so I always encourage people to look for things that you find fun. And
Right.
especially if you're like, you don't want to do it, or you feel like you don't have time to do it, that's really when it's like a wake up call. Like you really need to do it. And for any listeners who are like, okay, Laura, but how do you do that? I do have a free playlist planner that helps people find what's fun for them. Because sometimes it's just like, I don't even know, right?
Right.
It's either I don't know what's fun for me, or it's I don't have time. I know what it is, but I don't have time. So if you know and
Right.
you don't have time, that's the planner part of the playlist planner. And if you don't know, that's the playlist part, like, reminding yourself of what you like to do. And, it walks you through ways to get back into
Mm.
that.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, and I just saw a data point the other day that said, I think it was Dr. Mark Hyman shared it, and it wasn't specifically with the word play, but it was about breaks. and it said that you're actually better off to take regular breaks on the weekend, go do something enjoyable, could be a staycation, versus save all your days up for the 2-week vacation. They said the people that are healthier are not the 2-week vacation, because you kept all that stress going and they didn't have these breaks. We might call them fun breaks, but whatever you call it, a break from work or stress. So taking regular breaks from our stress, right? Disconnecting from our regular day to do something enjoyable is much healthier for us, because it lets our stress levels go back down, than taking one big vacation a year and never taking any breaks, until that vacation. And I thought that was pretty interesting as well.
Even if you make your vacation like a day or even an hour in your own town or even at your own house, right? Like
Yeah.
set yourself up where you have these little breaks, because then think about it. If you're taking one huge vacation, the pressure's on for that vacation to
Right.
go well, to be smooth. But if you can set up these little play breaks,
Yeah.
throughout your week on a regular basis, it's amazing to watch. And I can say it with confidence because I've seen it time and again through myself and my clients, where they start something new and small, even just like 1 hour a week. And they're like, what? They can't
Yeah.
even believe it. It's like, who knew that? Like if I just go, taking my dog for a walk through the forest, or, like
Yes.
smallest little things. They don't have to be big. They're not like these huge ski trips, or,
Right.
it's just getting yourself into what's fun zone for you and reminding yourself it's okay to take time to enjoy the simple pleasures of life.
Absolutely. And yeah, and I think if anybody's wondering or thinking like play, but it's such a specific word, but I think we're both more defining play as, it's something, doing something enjoyable, taking a break, doing something, that's, so how would you describe it, I guess, or
Perfect. I was
define it?
just thinking that I wanted to share my definition, because that's the thing, again, is like an author and a word nerd, like the definition makes a huge difference. So that's what I opened my book with,
Yep.
the definition of play. So I define play as an invitation to do something for yourself for the pure joy of it.
Yeah.
And that play is a pathway to living a joyful and fulfilling life. So it's not like pleasure, right? Like it's not like, oh, just eat all the,
Right.
junk food, but it's like the joy, and it's something for like the greater purpose. And it doesn't, but the thing is, it's not like to get somewhere, it's not to make any result. It's just like, hey, I just want to play for the sake of playing. That's one really important element of
Yeah.
play.
And I think too, it can be organized or unorganized, right? Like for instance, a recess might be organized, or my husband's he plays in a volleyball league and he plays in an adult soccer league. I have friends that do, the pickleball, they play with
Yeah.
just other couples. So there's lots of things that might seem more organized, but there's also, unplanned or unorganized play. And it can be any of those things. It doesn't have to look a certain way, like you said.
Right, like, for some people, honestly, one person I know, making spreadsheets is completely play. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I love it, I'm organizing the data, I'm getting the numbers in,"
Right.
and then other people might be like, "Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, I don't wanna spend my time on that." So it's unique to each one of us, and so
Right.
that's why, again, it's like going back to yourself. What is something that you love to do as a child? What is something that you see other people doing now that you're kinda like, "Oh." You're either like, "Ooh, that looks kind of fun," or you're like, "Huh? How come they get to do that?" That could be an indication of
Right.
something that piques your interest
Yeah.
or your curiosity. And so it's just like, okay, finding one thing and then putting it on your calendar, creating the space for it to happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. Two things I want to mention there. The first is, yeah, I mean, really what we're talking about is what is a creative outlet for you, or are you curious about? So for instance, if I have to cook dinner Monday through Friday, I don't cook that many nights in a row because I usually have leftovers, but if I have to cook dinner, that's not necessarily for me playful or creative endeavor. But if it's a Sunday late afternoon, I don't have anywhere to go and I can, have a glass of wine and I can make something I want to make, and I want to experiment with a new recipe, and no one's home and I put on the music, it's like the most fun because it's not this pressure that I have to get dinner on the table, or dinner that everyone likes. I'm getting to experiment. I'm getting to explore in the kitchen in that particular evening. And, that's, once again, I don't always think of cooking as fun, but sometimes it is a fun activity for me, you
Yeah,
know?
and I love that example because that's something that is part of our daily life. It's something that we have to do anyways.
Right.
So when we can come up with a more fun way to approach it, and again, it doesn't have to be every single meal, right?
Right.
Like if I'm just like making out breakfast or packing school lunches, I don't have to make that fun. Like
Right.
everything doesn't
Right.
have to be playful, But if we can flip the switch sometimes and find ways to turn ordinary moments into fun, and then also we can sneak in some, like you said, novel approaches, like doing things new together with your
Yes.
family, with your friends, with your spouses. That brings this excitement. And even if it's not fun in the moment, you might laugh at it later. But remember when we tried that thing, it's
Absolutely.
terrible, right? Like we went snorkeling once, my husband and I, and we're like, I don't know, it was like really choppy that day, and I didn't feel so good, and we could barely see anything. And afterwards, we just laughed. Like we still laugh about
Yeah.
that day.
I just, in my newsletter for this week, I share a story about going canoeing with my dad and my sister. And this was a very long time ago, like before we personally had cell phones. And we were on the Intercoastal Waterway, and the way there was gorgeous and beautiful, and it only took 2 hours. Well, the way back, it should have only taken 2 hours. It was dark, and we didn't have cell phones or flashlights or anything. And we're trying to figure out where our launch spot was. We were about 30 minutes from the Coast Guard getting called to come look for us, but we did make it. But of course, we're never going to forget that story and the fun we had, even in the afternoon where it kind of started getting us a little bit more dicey. You know what I mean? And so it's like that. We took an adventure, right? We did something we don't usually do. We did not go canoeing a lot, but we'll never forget that
Did you
experience.
go canoeing again? That's my question.
I have, yeah. I don't know that I've done that trip before, but I have gone canoeing. But I'm
Well,
normally way more prepared than I would have been at probably 17 years old. Normally I'm like the mom that packs it all, like, oh, but we might need this.
the live and the learn, right? That's what it
That's
comes down to. It's like, okay, now you can do it. And that's part of the learning through play, is that you take these little risks and
yeah,
risky play, like I know for me, like when I had two boys and I grew up in a family of girls, and I was like, oh, but then I'm looking at the research. It's like, okay, we got to let them wrestle. We've
yeah,
got to let them explore their boundaries of physical,
yeah,
like how far you can go with doing that. And it's like, oh yeah, like there's things to be learned through this, and not because there's things to be learned, but because it's also fun and interesting and
yeah. Well, and that's a
engaging.
good point you make, because I have three sons, so I have only boys, and I grew up in a home of boys and girls. Like I have three brothers and a sister, but I have had that thought and had to, remind myself often that many times a boy or some boys play different than girls might play or have different interests. And so we would go hiking, and it's like one of my boys, he was maybe 11 at the time, is like scaling down the side of the mountain, no joke, with his hands on each side of the wall. And I'm thinking, she literally could like fall and break everything. But he was already on his way with another. My husband was up above with the other boys, but he was on his way down with another boy and a dad. What was I going to do? Be like, oh my gosh, it's not safe. Don't do it. I mean, at some point, maybe he was 13. I don't know. But he had to start learning what he's able to do. Of course, I wanted him to be safe. But I also realized in the moment that he was exploring his environment. He was exploring what he was able to do. And I was going to hope that everything went okay. It wasn't like a cliff, right? It was down the side of a hill. But, I had to, so many times I've had to remind myself, just because it's not something I would have done personally, doesn't mean I shouldn't allow my
Yeah,
friend or my son or my husband to do that activity.
right. And that's such a great point and such a great transition for me here, because it's that room to grow and giving our kids room to grow. But let's take a pause on that, giving ourselves room to grow.
Absolutely.
And sometimes I feel like we get going with the everything in life that comes at us so much, so often, that we're just going through the motions.
Yeah.
And that's where I really invite everyone to stop and look for these moments of interest or spark for you. And if nothing comes to mind at first, that's okay.
Yeah.
Just opening it up and journaling, or giving yourself space to dream about it or daydream or consider it. And, and because when we are being most ourselves, it's so much easier and more joyful and opening to cruise through our lives. And I don't think that message is out there enough, right? It doesn't mean that we have to scale and have the best business or have the best anything, but what
Yeah.
if it's just most ourself, like
Absolutely.
taking away the barriers and being most ourself. And I get the chills even talking about it, because
Yeah.
love just working with people and helping them, asking them the right questions to
Yeah.
get them to their truths. And like that's always just my pleasure, is to offer that and to share that space with people. And that's what I'm working on every day and
Yeah.
playing through it, because I like to call it play versus work. But
Absolutely.
just the journey.
It is. And, one quote I really always enjoy is, if you think adventure is dangerous, try routine, it's lethal. Because, that sort of thing is we don't want to live a mundane life every day. I get that a lot of days we have similar things that happen in our day, right? Like maybe what you eat for breakfast, or you go to the same job for many years. But the point is we are called to live with new experiences and meet new people. Like we are actually, that's how we thrive the most, right? Is when there's something changing or new, or we're growing. And so I think that that's, like I say, if you're not growing, you're not thriving, right? So you have to be stretching and growing in some way, in some part of your life, versus otherwise you're stagnating.
Yeah. And just like we want to allow that safe space for our kids to push us, or maybe not even space like that, right? Like being comfortable, being uncomfortable,
Yeah.
like allowing ourselves this. And then if we do that, then we'll allow the people in our lives to do that as well, right? So it's like maybe you're good at doing it for other people, but maybe you can look at how can you do that for yourself, It's funny when you were talking about that because I share a lot that my childhood nickname was Play Maloney, right? Because I just was born like playful. I was always making up games as my parents called me. That's my maiden name. But I've never shared this one before. My other nickname was Mix It Up Maloney. So that was like a college. I played college tennis, and for some reason it was like Mix It Up Maloney, like try
Right.
something new. Right, like in tennis, if your strategy is not working, try something different, mix it up. And I never even thought of that or shared it before, but it's just this like, why can't we keep mixing it up? Even though we're adults, we don't have to just do the thing that we think we have to do next, right? We don't have to like get the job, have the kid, like do other things the way that you're supposed to or you should do it. So it's like, how can you mix it up?
Absolutely.
What's an opening you can create for yourself
Yeah.
that can give you life and vibrancy and bring, like draw people to you and make a difference for others and,
Right.
just be your best self, be your true self.
Yeah, I think that does happen a lot, especially with women, is that we think that because of the images and culturally, societally, what we thought, like, oh, this is sort of, whether you have kids or not, that part doesn't even matter. It's like, this is how you go through life, you need to get a house, well, and really those are just constructs or constraints that we heard for a really long time, but we get to actually define or redefine what success and what happiness and what all these things look like for ourselves. But like you said, we have to do the work to say, which of these things are not serving me? Which of these things are not, really helping me or bringing me joy? I would like to change some of it, and we can, but we have to do the work to make those changes for sure.
Yeah. And that's a great point, is defining what success means for you.
Yeah.
Really cool exercise, because then hey, am I hitting it? Right. That's why I always start my clients with, what are your values?
Yes.
What's important to you? Because once we know what's important to you, then we can put that into your life on a regular basis. It's intentional living versus just
Right.
doing all the things
Yeah.
that flow at us and flow after us.
Yeah. And we sort of alluded to this earlier, but it's definitely something that I talk about regularly as well, is you have to put into your schedule the fun and the time for relationships. You have to put in the schedule the things that are important to you, if it's your faith, if it's your health. So we have to schedule these things in, schedule time for breaks, and so, I talk about that a lot, because a lot of people say, I don't have time, but it really comes down to what are your values and priorities? And if you're saying to me, it's these things, but they're not in your schedule, then that tells us, right, there's a disconnect. And so I tell people all the time, you have to schedule these things into your week, or at least time that you have open time, right? So that you possibly can go do the fun thing, or the connect with your spouse or your friend or your child, whatever you want to work on. And so I think it's important that we are in charge of our schedules, but a lot of times I think we let our schedules control us.
Yeah. Well, because if you're not, like you said, if you're not planning it, or you're not putting in what's important to you, there's so many things going on.
Right.
There's so many things that can fill it. There's going to be an email, a phone call, like a notification, right? That's why I turn off almost every notification I can on my phone, so that I can stay present to what it is that I'm doing,
Yeah. So I wanted to mention this. So I know that you have a quote from Plato that you share, and I wanted to share another one and then talk about it. So I love the quote from Plato that says, you can learn more about a person in an hour of play than a year of conversation, because I always thought that that's so great. And I think it's so true. And so what might you just say about that, in the sense of, when you play, like you said, whether it's like you're playing doing a crossword with your parent, or whether you go do some fun activity with your spouse, or you play at the beach with your kids, or just you met somebody new and you're on a group together. I think that connection, and you talked about it before, but I think it's really important that people realize there's this is fun that's created in play, right? Or in some doing something enjoyable, more so than just going about our daily routines of living, our lives.
Yeah. When you're truly playing, you enter the magical flow state. And in that moment, time stands still
Yeah.
and you just have this, beautiful connection with each other. You get each other on another level. You're just doing things for the sake of pure fun rather than like trying to get somewhere. So all these like pressures just kind of drop
Yeah.
and you get to just naturally be together, right? It's like one of the reasons I love at bedtime with my boys when everything else for the day is done and we can just sit there
Right.
and enjoy each other's company. There's no push, there's no pull.
Right.
There's play and there's connection. And I think what I love that quote as well, because then you get a feel for what their spirit is, who their genuine person is, or like where they're at in their journey, what they're learning at the moment, and
Right.
they what they're working through and what they're interested in, where they're curious about. You get to see inside a really good little sneak peek.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So what would you maybe just share, one or up, up to three ideas or tips for people just to get people moving in all of these, doing more of these things in their own life? Are there specific things you share with people to try to encourage this type of adding this in?
Yeah, well, the first one really would be thinking about what you love to do for fun when you were younger, right? So that's part
Mhm.
of a playlist planner is what did you like to do? And
Right.
how could you incorporate that into your day now? Right? Like when I was young, I loved playing Barbies. And now I'm adult, so I'm not going to sit and play Barbies, although I could, I guess, if I really wanted to. But like that's why I like coming on podcasts and talking with you, Kristen, and sharing with you guys listening is like this is an extension of that. It's like, hey, how can we create our worlds, right? It's like if you think about Barbie and you think about intentional living,
Yeah.
it's right there. What do we want to put in? So finding these clues, looking back at your life, and then, but literally planning it in, like pulling out your calendar. I
Yeah.
can do that Wednesday at 5:30 p.m., like putting it in and then putting an alert. I know I don't do a lot of alerts, but I do reminder alerts all
Yeah.
the time, right? Like an alarm or something, especially when I'm playing at my writing because I get such deep into that flow state
Yeah.
that I lose track of time. So it's like finding these moments of flow for you and just being curious, like if you're your own detective, you're your own
Right.
play detective. What's fun for me? Ooh, what
Mhm.
happened with that? How can I adjust it? How can I tinker?
Right.
Not like that was fun or that wasn't fun. You'd be like, oh, that was fun. How could I do more of that? Or how could that was medium fun? How might I tinker with that?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we already did kind of allude to this, but we're never too old, right? I think, and obviously you do as well. We're never too old for anything. First of all, to have new dreams. We're never too old to play. We're never too old for a new, meet a new friend. My mom's that's in visiting in town. She's turning 80 this year, and I mentioned to you before we started recording. She's a artist, and she's a children's book author, illustrator. But she loves nothing more than painting and drawing and playing games. I mean, I always have said, she's like has a childlike spirit, but it's because she's always stayed tapped into that spirit of fun, right? She's always stayed tapped into the things she loved and has always done those things. And so, one thing I want to do is just encourage people, like, I don't care if you're, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, older, right? Or maybe your parents are that age. How do we just keep encouraging people? Like, you're not too old, right? And if the people that live the longest, right, the longevity studies talk about so many of these things. I mean, one is deep connections with a few people moving, but it's also doing things that they enjoy to some extent.
Yeah. No, I loved it in the new Dan Buettner series that came out on
Yeah.
Netflix. Like I loved it. The very first quote that they opened up with was she was basically talking about the importance of play and having fun. And I was sitting there on my couch, like at the edge of my seat, like, oh yes, yes. And I was like so thankful that this message is getting out,
Yes.
to people. His work is so fascinating with the blue zones. For those of
Yeah.
you who aren't familiar, is like the top places where people are living the longest into their hundreds and the things that they do to help get them there and moving their body is such a crucial part of it as well, and that's why it's so cool where we are now because there's so many more examples of older people that are still active, right? Like in San
Right.
Diego, I'm going to go speak at this event coming up with these women who are on the San Diego Soul basketball team, and they're like some of the women are in their 90s and I'm going to go practice with them. I'm so excited. I can't wait to meet them. And, just setting this role models out for people that you can always keep going, you can change, you can start something brand new, right?
Mm,
Like people who
yeah.
are dressing however they want into different age. And, I was
Yes.
talking to my mom about this too recently. And even from when she was younger, it would be like, okay, women could only wear skirts to college. She said her cousins, like, all they could only wear skirts to college, and it's like,
Right.
we don't have all of
Right.
these restrictions anymore. And so we're
That's right.
getting more and more examples, and we get to set those examples for the future generation
Mm, yeah.
as well. And so it's like, what do we want to do? What can we create? How can we be, true to ourselves?
Yeah. And, I think that's a good point because personal style or the way that we want to show, our interest and our personality is a form of play or having fun. My sister-in-law, I mean, I know a lot of women that love, their outfits and their jewelry and all the things. But my one sister-in-law, she just like, it is a passion of hers to find like the most amazing outfit that really expresses who she is and where she's going. She puts a lot of thought into it. And for her, that is like playtime, right? It is fun. It's not just about going and buying a dress. Like she wants it to match what the thing is for. And there's meaning behind things and then how the thing matches together. I'm like, I've never put that much thought into it. You know what I mean? Like maybe the color I picked, but because for me, I'm more like, oh, I want to find something that looks good and then I want to be done with it because that's just not the way I express myself as much.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny that you mentioned that because yesterday I was putting together this post. One of the games in the book is called Play Dress Up, right? When you think about that for kids, you're
Yeah.
dressing up. But it was really cool that I got to partner with one of my mentors, Christina Glickman, who is also really into fashion. She was like at Fashion Week in Paris, and she's always has these cool outfits. And
Uh-huh.
so it was really like you were talking about the power of expressing yourself and using clothes as a tool of play and,
Right.
feeling like yourself. And so,
Yes.
like you said, for was it your sister-in-law?
Yeah.
So for your sister-in-law, she really feels that. So she's going to get into it. That's
Right.
like where your mom is really into the art, into
That's
this thing.
right.
And so it doesn't matter what the output or what the method is, but as long as we're expressing ourselves through creatively and playful manners, then that's getting our spirit out. That's sharing our spirit
Yeah.
with other people and having that two-way connection. It's just
Absolutely.
the magic of life.
Absolutely. Love it. Okay. So maybe what is just what kind of what message you want to leave us with just to encourage people in their lives to live a more joyful and meaningful life? What would you just want to share?
Yeah, there's going to be moments of growth. So sometimes you might find yourself feeling stopped or feeling shut down. And when you reach those moments, just tell yourself it's okay, right? Like you can put your hand on your heart, yourself a little hug if you need, and just realize this was an opportunity for growth.
Yeah.
This might be just the chance you're looking for to feel comfortable being uncomfortable. And maybe
Yeah.
that means trying something new or trying something you've always wanted to try, but you've been nervous about trying, and just reach out, invite a friend to join you, or, you know, let this be your permission slip to try something new and to test out your passion and joy. Let your full self shine because you are just the most unique, wonderful, special person. And we all need everyone to
Yeah.
show up as their full selves.
Right.
And, if you guys need help, that's what Kristen and I are here for. We're here to be of service to you, to ask you the right questions and to give you these tools that helped us. And, we just love to sharing it with it. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for, just doing the work and invite you to play.
Mm, so good. Okay, Laura, can you tell us how can people connect with you online and learn more about your book that's recently come out and all of that good stuff?
Yeah, you guys can find me at my website, laurahaver.com, or you can find me on Instagram, Laura M. Haver. I also have an author moms community. So if anyone is an author or a future author wants to come join us and get that support and inspiration, we'd love to connect and have you.
So good. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today to come and share, the message of how important play and just tapping into our truest self is. So I so appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, you guys. Have a good day. Play on.